My guest today is Niko Hammer. Niko, I've known you for a long time, and one of the things I've really enjoyed about you as a young person is the fact that you're really aggressive at getting things done. Um, where did you kind of find the desire to kind of push forward with your brand and marketing beyond what's just expected of you at this point?
Yeah. Hey, Troy. Thanks for having me. We've been really good buddies for a while, and I think you and I click on so many different levels. I think when it comes to getting things done, I admire that trait in you over anything that I admire about you. But I think realistically, the way I look at it is like you've always got to be moving, and I think staying stagnant is my biggest fear. And I think during this downtime, especially during the crisis here, I've been really excited to just pick up momentum through other channels. So I think doing these types of video calls, doing some podcasts, connecting with as many people as possible. I think that is the number one thing I'm excited about. But I think the desire to continue on, I think it just comes from grinding. Even from a sports perspective, I played collegiate soccer and I played pro soccer. I went over to England and trialed in the English Premier League, and then I played some semi-pro soccer in Georgia, and I continued on. And I think when you look at that mentality where you're continually getting stuck in on the field and off the field, that travels. I think it's cliche, but it means so much to sit there and talk about how your sports experience carried over to your career. So yeah, I'm always moving.
One thing that you mentioned about that, with whether it be college or the English Premier League, which I don't think a lot of people maybe understand that aren't in the world of soccer, but that's like Major League Baseball. That's like the NFL. That's something pretty big for this country, is what you'd see in the United Kingdom. But it's about embedding yourself into a different environment and still making it your own. I mean, and when you've had to go to several environments, several different, whether it's colleges, whether it's the English Premier League, whether it's semi-pro soccer, you've had to kind of restart over. What is that component about restarting and being able to make that your own in not just the team itself, but also the area, also the community, and everything that kind of becomes a nuance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I attribute a lot of the quick pivots in my life to change as opportunity. So I think every time I put myself in a new area, whether it's a new team, a new college, a new, just household change. I mean, I think really changes opportunity. So when I moved back to Olympia, Washington from the East Coast, my opportunity was, hey, we're midpoint between Seattle and Portland. There's got to be tons of opportunity out here. And with my marketing background, I knew there was so much I could bring to the table, especially, I kind of think the East Coast moves a little bit quicker. So I think when I came over here, I really wanted to implement some of the things I learned. And quite honestly, I think it's been such a fantastic opportunity. I mean, hey, I settled down. I literally found the best wife, and I had a baby recently. I mean, I think you look at all those things and I go, holy crap, like, heck yeah, it changes opportunity. You know what I mean?
Well, and the interesting thing about that, you mentioned coming to Olympia, but you also had, and this is where I got to know you, was you worked with the Twin City United down in Centralia. That's about 30 miles from Olympia. And it was really kind of understanding metrics and merchandise and marketing and things of that nature, but also getting embedded into the community there and then becoming kind of chamber focused for that smaller chamber. Those are a lot of things that a lot of people don't really consider, or they only kind of put themselves into one little box. You kind of went out from that starting point. Kind of describe that.
Yeah, I think it's a circle of life. So um, you've got to put into the community to receive, and I think that's a huge concept that people might miss sometimes. Yeah, so I moved from Florida, Tampa, Florida, to Centralia, Washington. And I think if anyone knows the polar opposites here that are going on, I think Centralia, Washington is beautiful in its own way. And you know, when I moved out, it was to kind of get myself another, chance at creating some amazing opportunities. So I stayed with my family out in Centralia, and I looked into the opportunity of creating a semi-pro soccer team in area that isn't historically known for soccer, and it was a lot of breaking barriers, and it was a lot of learning new ideas and new concepts and cultures. And I think when it came down to it, you had to really look at what the makeup of the actual city, Centralia, and even Chehalis. You have to understand their dynamics there. And so realistically, I looked into it and I said, we must connect with our community. So I actually really kickstarted some initiatives where we went to the local Boys and Girls Club that was just built in in Chehalis, and I did some soccer programs for free. I donated a lot of my time. I got some young professionals involved, and for 12 weeks, every Monday, we went out and we put on a soccer camp for kids at the local Boys and Girls Club. And so you take that example and you multiply it 10x, and you want to create a fan experience for your local community. So we took this club that was ready to roll, and it had some really great roots. It had Steve Ward, who's the vice president at Centralia College, who's really embedded in getting this thing off the ground. And we stimulated this community to understand, hey, soccer is not just a game. Soccer is an experience, and you can translate that across any sport. But when you put bouncy houses, when you put hot dogs and hamburgers, and you put music in the background, and you have an experience for families to go and get a cheap meal and a fun way to interact with the community, all that comes into play when you talk about marketing and you talk about fan experience. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the pivotal moments in my life, understanding that, hey, like, I can make a buck off of creating an experience, and understanding the sociological and psychological factors that come into play when you talk about marketing. That was beautiful.
One thing that interests me is the idea that sometimes we're constrained not by how small our budget is, but by how big it's not. The idea that we can't do something based on the idea that, well, we don't have a giant budget. Is that sometimes better to have like a shoestring or duct tape budget because it makes you think creatively?
Yeah, I think any of the external pressures are going to really catapult you to a new level. You've got to be creative in this industry, in marketing and branding. You've got to understand that, if your constraints are money, and your budget might not be where you want it to be, I think you've got to really lean on your connections and the creativity that you might have. So, for example, I mean, there are tons of vendors that are looking to just be in front of a body of fans, right? 200 plus fans. I reached out to our local Home Depot, got them to set up a fun activity for the kids. But then I also looked into our own community and said, what can we do to put in so we can get out? So, I looked to a couple of the players actually on my team, and I said, hey, what can you guys do to not only promote us as Twin City, but also promote us in a light where it gives back to your own community? So we actually got several of our guys to go out and get some sponsorships, and so I almost created my own sales team out of the players, right? So it's like, I didn't have to pay them. I actually got them, on some of the commission type payment. We created nothing or created everything out of nothing, essentially. So yeah, I mean, we were working with like a 0 to maybe $1,000 budget, and we generated probably 10 grand that year. I mean, it was almost silly to think, holy crap, we're in Centralia, Washington, and we're doing this. And so now, I mean, I'm kind of disconnected with the club, but I mean, they're in good hands. I think right now they've got a women's program that's crushing it. They've got several youth programs that are really dominating. And so I think it's now kind of a farm system from youth to college there in Centralia. So yeah, I mean, take what you have and just crush it. I think that's the number one thing. And if you're afraid to, lean on people in the community, then you've got to really, push yourself to understand that you got to put in to get out.
And the other issue that comes from that is also what you've mentioned about leaving and, kind of once something's run its course, not getting so invested that you can't do the next big thing. You had to leave that. You actually went up to Olympia and, you started to become really a part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Gateway Rotary, which is the fastest growing one. You've become more community focused, as well as now starting a marketing job at Olympia Orthopedic. And I mean, that means that you've actually left behind some of the things that you had as initiatives before, but you don't try to strangle those old initiatives or the old club because it's not your thing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so like if you're a marketing person, you're gonna always understand that like there are windows of opportunity. So for instance, I started out in Tampa, Florida, working for a third party measurement company called DexaFit. We worked with DEXA machines and did stuff for bodybuilders, and people were really excited about their fitness and stuff. So I went from that understanding the marketing, understanding the PR, understanding the relationships, to then traveling over to the other coast here on the West Coast, going into a new sports marketing arena, understanding that there are windows of opportunity. I got in, learned, had some great success, passed on the torch to some other marketing minds. And then, yeah, I mean, there's always room to grow. So I looked at the next best thing. I mean, what is that next step? So I looked at a $100 million company, and I understood that they had some opportunities for someone to come in and really set the groundwork for strategy, branding, solidifying the community presence. Basically, I was the face for a company that was looking for someone to grasp, the company's image by its reins and say, hey, we're going to go this direction. And I think, it wasn't just myself and my thoughts. I think I owe a lot of thanks to mentors like yourself, Troy, mentors like, Matthew, who works at Feed the Agency. There's a lot of people I owe, thanks to, because you can't just do this on your own. I think, Troy, if I can share any insight here, it's, always ask questions, always look to, someone who's been through experiences like this, look to someone who has been successful in the industry that you're trying to dominate. Because at the end of the day, on LinkedIn, for example, you are, a brand, you're an image of yourself, but you're reaching out to other people who've gone through the same things and maybe have better input. And then just being humble and understand that, every little success is a win under your belt. Not necessarily trying to combat, the imposter syndrome, but you're trying to combat, those little wins and reaching for the stars. So I think, those windows of opportunities going through your career, you're gonna find, those opportunities to really pounce. And who knows what the next best thing is, but right now I'm so excited to be crushing it in a niche healthcare world as orthopedics is.
You mentioned something that I've always found curious, which is imposter syndrome. And I know that, there are psychological things that, people can have, and I'm not demeaning them, but in a way, isn't that just basically psyching yourself out? The idea that somehow you're not good enough based on somebody else's opinion. And isn't that the antithesis of marketing and branding in general? That you can't live by other people's opinions. You have to essentially, they have to either be part of your tribe or they won't be.
Yeah. Well, so I was just connected with a lot of industry professionals recently on some of these Zoom happy hours, as we like to call them, where we're having virtual drinks. And a lot of these industry professionals mention this term that is beautiful, and I wish I could say it was something I came up with, but it's called head trash. Head trash is realistically all the crap that is piled up in your head when you're going through your career, with all the little things you think of, whether it's, am I going to be able to pitch this six-figure proposal to my company? Am I there? Am I good enough? Am I lucky? Am I just lucky because I'm here? Is it my success that brought me here? So I think, you know, understanding how to channel that head trash and overcome this negative mentality is huge, especially at a young age and early on in your career. I don't know, Troy, I'm sure you've gone through some head trash. I mean, you've had a very prestigious career, and I think I think you and I connect sometimes on some head trash, and it's very important for people to understand that it's okay to be real with yourself and with your friends, and with your mentors. So, for example, Troy, when I reach out to you and I say, hey man, I'm going through this, let's talk about it. You're so open to keeping it real. And I think listening and understanding, where you are, and understanding other perspectives from people who are outside of your head trash, to tell you, hey, this is what it is. It's kind of like, it's similar to, you're in a relationship with a crappy person, and your buddies are telling you, hey, this person isn't good for you, but you're so in your mind that you don't understand and you don't see from a different perspective. I think that's head trash, right? That's this imposter syndrome. It ties into everything you do. So I mean, some of my advice is, work through that head trash with some buddies, and hopefully you have a buddy that keeps it real like you, Troy.
Well, I think that it also, head trash or whatever you want to call it, also requires something that you find out of I guess the gym mentality, which is an accountability partner, somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, who isn't going to come from the notion that you shouldn't do it, your ideas are stupid, or something of that nature, but wants to help you work through it to make it a better system. And they do that because it's a support system. And I think accountability is something, when you see that, that's how it makes your marketing ideas better, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, ask any successful brand and marketing individual. They're going to say, hey, this idea stemmed from somewhere else. Now, they might not give them full credit, but I think, a lot of what we're doing is we're just trying to improve on processes, and we're improving on, things that have already been done. So I think, when you take, for example, you look at a billboard and you go, holy crap, like they could have knocked 2 or 3 words off this billboard to make it read quicker when you're driving 60 miles an hour down the freeway. The next thing you do as a branding professional, you're going to go and you're going to improve on those kind of things. So I think, taking your issues or taking your thought processes and having a creative conversation with your buddies, with industry professionals, is the number one thing. I think, when people talk about networking, I mean, it's so black and white sometimes. You go and you toss out your business card and you have these conversations. Sometimes people don't realize that these are opportunities for you to open up with your head trash, or open up with these initiatives and campaigns, and bounce things off people and say, hey, like, what would you do? Hey, and I want to hear the brutal truth. I want you, Troy, to tell me, holy crap, Niko, that sweatshirt you're wearing is ugly. Same kind of concept with these ideas. And I think, as true as you can get to what the absolute, realistic view on any kind of idea or campaign you're doing is going to be so crucial. I mean, because think about it. I mean, you post something on social media, and how many people are going to have different views on it? You know what I mean? How many people are going to perceive a certain passage of words as different? And it's really trying to connect with your audience and your target audience. So I think you take a buddy who's able to really shoot, the truth, and then you're going to figure out where you're really at as far as, messaging.
Well, and that comes to the power of networking in general. I mean, you've been very successful at chamber events and other things. And really, I would say that it's not just selling yourself, but getting away from the idea of having a name tag. Way too often we use that name tag as a defense of, this is who we are, this is what we represent. Whereas if you can get that name tag off of you and you can go and network and have that to where people look forward to seeing you, people know who you are, people can associate with you, doesn't that create a better dynamic to whether or not they're using your system or not, they still know who you are?
Yeah, I mean, name tags, man. I think name tags and business cards are secondary. I think, you know, I will go to an event that has several hundreds of individuals and professionals, and if I have one meaningful conversation where I literally don't talk to anyone else, and I have one meaningful conversation that leads to a new idea generated, maybe at the end of the day, a new patient being funneled into our patient funnel, for orthopedics, specifically. I have done my job, and I think being a resource to your community doesn't mean that you're, Niko Hammer brand manager for an orthopedic company. It means that I know someone who can help me get things done quicker than I would if I would have to go a secondary route. If I'm sitting here in my shower and toilet are messing up, do I know someone networking wise that can come in, shoot me straight on price, and also get things done very quickly? Yeah, that's the ultimate goal of networking, right? But I mean, I think when you talk about name tags and all that kind of BS, and excuse me if I offend anyone, but I think let's get things done. Let's speed up this process. We can grow so quickly together as a community if we can just, hey, I'm Niko. You've got an issue, orthopedics. You need a knee replacement. Oh, you've got, Grandma Rosemary who needs a knee replacement. I'm your guy. Let's get things going. And I think, the quicker we can make these connections and the more meaningful these connections are, we're going to progress as a community so much quicker than let's go sit down, let's go have coffee, let's do that. I mean, it's great. It's traditional. You feel good about yourself. You have these conversations, but Troy, let's go, man. Let's roll. And I think you and I both agree on this, that, our community is so beautiful. And I think if we can just create some efficient processes here, we're going to be set up for future successes.
So when you're building out and you're doing all these things, as you mentioned, you now are married a year
Yeah.
ago, and then also you now have a child, I think September. I mean, you have all of this, this family atmosphere. How do you achieve work-life balance to where you feel that you're giving enough, not only to your family, but also to the marketing effort and the brand and everything else, to where you feel you're not cheapening one or the other?
Yeah, man, I think I'm still learning every day on a beautiful balance and a beautiful relationship between work and family and home life, and just making sure that you've got this outlet that you can go to, where you're not bothered by work. For me, I think it's different because I am so excited to, you know, work, I would say, 24/7. Being a marketing person, I think I can handle, receiving emails at any hour, receiving texts, confirming different creatives, speaking to my copywriter, speaking to my video team, speaking to third-party marketing companies that we might be working with, vendors, whatever. I think that stuff, black and white, pretty easy. The downside, I think, to that is going to sleep without a clear mind, where you can really have that time with your family. I think that's where I kind of go, cool. I'm giving everything I have to my work, but I would love to give everything I have to my family. So when I look at it, sometimes I have to go, Niko, you've got to shut off your phone at 7 p.m. Or 8 p.m. or you've got to put on do not disturb, or you've got to kind of give yourself these parameters to where you can at least go, I've got rules in place to where, or safety nets in place where I can say, hey, honey, I'm going to be working up until this point. here's my free time. I mean, and it goes both ways. I think my family and my wife, they understand that, this is a huge part of my life is, branding, marketing, being a part of the companies I'm attached to. And I think they understand that what makes me happy is getting things done. So a lot of the times I'm so thankful that my family understands that, this work is important. But I also have other things in place that keep me in check. My supervisor, my COO, my CEO, they always give me crap. I'm on vacation. Niko, you don't need to answer this email right now. Go have fun on the beach or wherever you're at. So I think, all those things, there's a balance here. And I think I'm still learning every day. And I know as I get more deep and deep into my career, the heavier I go, I think I'm going to have more difficulties, but I think I'm learning from a lot of professionals now, giving yourself time to meditate, give yourself time to understand, things do happen in a negative light. Even if you're so positive, how do you work around, the bad times? So, I mean, for instance, we're going through a crisis right now. How do you pivot, with your family and your work to continue to be successful in a time of doubt? And so, yeah, Troy, that's a great question, man. I appreciate it.
Well, one of the things is, I mean, you've done some amazing stuff for OOA at this point. You even got your boss, the CEO, boss of the year. I mean, that's pretty amazing. But you also have many initiatives that are in the pipeline that, as you mentioned, with this whole COVID-19 thing, and you wearing the COVID cut right now of shaving your
Yeah,
head,
I did
uh,
it, man.
even though those initiatives are in the pipeline, things stop. So
Yeah.
do they hurt your marketing mind because you've already put them in place? You put so many man hours, probably what, about 1,000 man hours, and some of the bigger initiatives that you've kind of
Yeah.
made sure privately people know about. But how do you kind of pivot, and how do you make sure that you're living up to the challenges of the brand when you can't spend for the brand or can't motivate for the brand because everything comes to a screeching halt?
Yeah, no, I'll touch on a couple of those. I think, first off, thanks for giving me the shout out with the boss of the year. I think, but my team totally deserved that. My CEO, Ben, he is fantastic. So taking away nothing there, they're fantastic. Yeah, sure. I might have helped, on the networking side and plugged in, some names. But other than that, I mean, yeah, I think, geez, how many other people will sit there and tell you how many things that, were affected by this crisis where they had to pivot. I think going back to kind of understanding where our world is now. I think we're all concierge services now, which is crazy in its own sense. I think we've sped up the process here that naturally probably would have occurred over time. But yeah, I mean, some of the initiatives I was working on for 2020 were huge. And quite honestly, they would have probably changed my career. They would have really put my CV, just they would have helped me immensely from a selfish side, right? But I think as long as I look at it from a holistic approach where, I understand my company is doing everything they can to put the employee and our patient's best interest afoot, I think that is huge. I've looked at so many companies uh, daily that are doing some oh no's, right? They're sending out emails that might have a spammy effect versus resourceful and adding to benefits for the consumer. But man, there are some things where pivoting is very difficult when you've got six figures on the board, when you've got huge strategic roadmaps planned around some of these brand initiatives. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think we really were able to manage this transition from a traditional space to a digital world where now we're offering on demand specialty service where you can sit at your couch And from a smartphone or a tablet, you can reach out to one of our orthopedic specialists, one of our surgical experts, to explain that, an orthopedic need might not need immediate care. And if it does need emergency care, we've got our urgent care that's open 24/7, or excuse me, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. It almost feels like 24/7. But I mean, we're doing so much for our community to help relieve that patient volume at our local emergency rooms and hospitals. So when you look at pivoting from a whole, yeah, it sucks that we weren't going to be ridiculously creative this quarter, maybe this, several series of quarters. But when you maintain relationships with, X, Y, and Z, you're going to have future outcomes that are going to be maybe even 5x better, because you're having these, hardships, but you're also expressing to the community, to your consumer, that, your company that has tons of leaders and tons of employees and tons of community attachments that are so important to your day to day. So, for example, our company is paying our benefits, although we might have had to put several, hundreds of employees on furlough, or this part-time hold. I mean, I looked into 3 or 4 other orthopedic companies in the Pacific Northwest. None of them are paying their employees health benefits during this crisis. I mean, what a relief knowing, hey, I might not have work right now. I'm going to file for unemployment, and the government might be putting in some other important pieces to this, where we're going to get a little bit more compensation. But holy crap, my company is doing so many things to help us as human beings. I mean, that's beautiful. So I think pivoting, it really shows who is going to, really shine during a crisis, who's going to be defined in this time as as innovative and full of leadership.
And that's right. Once the fog lifts off of all this, you are going to see who the last people standing are, but also the last companies that really cared about their employees. And I think that's going to actually probably come not just from a marketing, but a brand standpoint of what they really stand for, and whether or not that brand is able to withstand the idea that they didn't, care about their employees. And that's something that's going to be probably, especially with your generation that gets more conscience on, where they buy from, what the ethics of the company are. I think it's going to matter for the next, 20, 35 years.
Yeah, you have several hundreds of frontline employees who are essentially your front line of marketing, right? Because in a healthcare situation, excuse me, we've got, several hundreds of employees who have families, who have friends, who have all their own networks. If you're sitting there telling me that your company, was able to at least somehow show a silver lining in this crisis, you're going to be hearing about that. You're going to be seeing the impact, and it's going to be a positive impact when the dust settles, because not only do you have employees that might not be as upset, but you have employees that are sitting there expressing this leadership, this fantastic, just light at the end of the tunnel, that our company has been able to give. And thank God, I'm fortunate, and I appreciate how many people really care about us as employees. But at the other end, it's so beneficial for a brand, from a brand standpoint, from your image, to go, you know what, this is a historic story that we've all seen or heard about. We've all read about things in our textbooks. I'm not old enough to understand, the true gravity of certain situations in our past that went through these types of troughs and crisis through our economy. But I understand from a branding standpoint that, holy crap, like, if you have a community that understands that, you care about me as a consumer and you care about me as an employee, that's going to take us from this traditional space now push into this digital world. Now from receiving these patients that come in and go, wow, during a crisis situation you were more than just a service, you were a family, and that culture hopefully will carry on, you know what I mean?
I think that's exactly it. Niko, thank you very much for coming on and chatting a little bit in the Entrepreneurs Roundtable. It's great to have you and all the brand marketing that you've done.
Yeah, no, Troy, I thank you, and I really appreciate your platform that you've got going on here. I think it's very important to have this type of expression here, especially when so many people are lost, or so many people are finding themselves. These go-getters are trying to really push themselves during this time, and they're stuck at home. So I think your platform and what you're trying to do here is fantastic. I do want to say one more thing. I think that our community is such a beautiful community, and I really appreciate the relationships I've built with Gateway Rotary, with Thurston Chamber, with South Sound Chamber, which is Lacey, with the young professional groups, and the other ones that I haven't mentioned, but I think it's huge. And I encourage everyone to continue on in this time, and I know we're going to come out on top. I think Cheryl Selby has done an amazing job, and I think like Big Brothers Big Sisters, for example, they're really doing a good job at trying to push themselves into this next digital world. So thank you so much, Troy.